Well, hello and thanks for watching this video. We are continuing our lesson on the priesthood. I'm Samuel and this is Sue with me. And so we're going to move on with the Melchizedek lineage. And once we have an understanding of who our Melchizedek is, and that his lineage has granted him the right to receive that title, Melchizedek, then we must move on to a next level of understanding, which is that Yeshua was appointed and anointed to become our Melchizedek. So before we can even go there, it behooves us to understand the Melchizedek priesthood.
Right. So Yeshua had put into place a temporary system.
Mm-hmm.
He had to put that system into place at Mount Sinai right after the Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
And that system had the right to replace, if you want to use that word, the Melchizedek system.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to think of it as putting the Melchizedek system on hold until the Messiah could come.
Mm-hmm.
But the Levitical system was a temporary system. The Levitical priesthood was temporary. Mm-hmm. It was meant only to brought into place to teach the people how to become Melchizedek.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when we studied that out, that's exactly what he was doing.
Okay. So to clarify to everyone, you're speaking of the Exodus, right?
Right. So you see, Genesis provided the blueprint of Yahweh's system, his plan for government over the earth and for the continuity of the Melchizedek system.
Okay.
And it was to continue from generation to generation until the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
However, when we get to the book of Exodus, what we'll find out that when the people came to Mount Sinai, they were actually to become Melchizedek.
Okay.
And because God was going to marry them, and he was going to graft them into the Melchizedek system.
Mm-hmm.
But because of what they did, God had to say, okay, you're not righteous, and I'm not going to take you there, so I'm divorcing you, and I'm going to put a temporary system that will teach you until I can bring someone who will actually cause this to happen.
Okay.
And that was what God was doing. He was being very gracious to what he called stiff-necked people.
Right.
And so what Moses was doing in the writing of the Exodus was actually providing for us a record of how the Melchizedek system was temporarily exiled out and the Levitical put in.
Okay. So that's a play on words. So I get your point. The golden calf incident. Right, at Mount Sinai, which caused Yahweh to divorce the people. And that is when he set the Levitical system in place.
Right.
Okay. So he did this in order to bring the people back to a state of righteousness. So let me explain what we're referring to by reading Hebrews 7, verse 11 and 12. Okay, 11. Therefore, if perfection were through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need was there that another priest should arise according to the order of Melchizedek, and not called according to the order of Aaron? For the priesthood being changed of necessity, there is also a change of the law.
Right. So in order for Yeshua to reverse and bring forth what is basically the text in Hebrew is telling us, that he had to reverse out the Levitical system and put into place the Melchizedek system.
Right.
We have to understand that the Levitical system was temporary, that the Melchizedek system is the perfection of God. That he's what the writer of Hebrew is telling us. He's being very explicit when he says that perfection did not come through the Levitical system.
Right.
And the law of the Levitical system was unable to bring perfection, whereas the Melchizedek brings perfection.
Right.
Yeshua exchanged the old Levitical for the new Melchizedek.
Okay.
But really and truly, the Melchizedek was not new.
Right.
It was a renewing of.
Okay. So in our previous videos, you said that the Melchizedek system was put into place with Adam.
Right. So in the previous video, we said that it was Adam, Seth, Enosh, Canaan, Jared, Mahalalel, Methuselah, and Noah. And that 5 days before the flood began, Noah inherited from Methuselah, and then the flood came, and then after the flood, post-flood, he's still Melchizedek when he comes off the ark, and then we see him acting as Melchizedek in Genesis 8:20, and then from remainder of that chapter, this is when God gives him the rainbow and all of that, and into chapter 9, the Bible doesn't give us explicit details, but we see that he was acting as priest there, as the Melchizedek priest. But immediately thereafter, we find out in Genesis 10:11 that the false system arises through Nimrod. And Nimrod proclaimed himself to be a king of kings, a lord of lords. What was he saying? He was saying, I am the Melchizedek. Now, of course, he was not saying I'm the king of righteousness. What he was saying is I'm the king of the earth. But that is actually the title of the Melchizedek. And so he had no right to that title. God never appointed him nor anointed him. And he was not of the right bloodline. So he was usurping Noah. Because Nimrod was of Ham and not of Shem.
So he was not of the right. So being the father of the post-flood apostate system, and I remember correctly, it was he who was the reason the title Melchizedek was first put into use. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay, let me explain this so we're totally clear on this. All right. The word Melchizedek comes from the word Melech and Sedek. And we say king of righteousness, which is truthfully a correct understanding, but it's more than that. It means my king is righteous. If you study it out in Hebrew, it really means my king is righteous. So when we say the word Melchizedek, we're saying my king is the righteous king, the right king.
The right king.
The right king. So Shem was the right king. While Nimrod was the wrong king. And what Nimrod did was he usurped Noah, and of course his kingdom continued even unto Shem, and we see it also, the whole reason why God brought Abraham out of Nimrod's system and over into Shem's system. So that Noah could truthfully say, my king is the right king. And I'm going to align myself with that king, who is the right king. God's appointed and anointed king of the earth, who is serving until his anointed Messiah, which is what Messiah means, anointed one, comes and becomes the final Melchizedek.
Okay, so Nimrod's rebellion, that necessitated the call of Abraham. Yahweh desired to reset the system after the fall of the Tower of Babel. But because what you're saying is that Abraham was required to make a choice which king he would serve, and that's the right king. Right.
Okay, so that's the whole point of Genesis 14. Abraham was being required to say that Shem was his king. And he was being required to tithe into that system. So Abraham did not serve as Melchizedek, but what God was saying to Abraham in Genesis 12 and all the way to the end of the book of Genesis, chapter 50, is that through the lineage, the offspring of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's important that we understand Isaac was the one that served as Melchizedek, but it is through the lineage of Abraham that Isaac came, because Isaac was the promised king, and then it was through Isaac that Jacob came. And so again, because there was two Esau.
This is awesome.
and Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So
Okay.
we have to know the right lineage.
Right.
The promises were made to whom?
Right. Okay.
And that's where we stand and where we proclaim that there was a land grant but there was also a throne grant going on here.
Wow. Okay, this is awesome. So post-flood, it was Noah, Shem, Eber, Isaac, Jacob, and then Jacob hid the lineage in Judah.
Right. It's basically where we pick up with Exodus, because Genesis ends with Jacob hiding the scepter in Judah. So then we pick up with Exodus and the story of the Melchizedek system needing to move forward from that point. But Jacob and all of his sons are in Egypt, and all of his, because of a worldwide famine, they had gone down to Egypt. And several hundred years later, the Israelites were in bondage, and because the Egyptians feared them. So would you read for me real quickly Genesis 15:12? I think I'm going to have you read through 16.
Okay. All right, Genesis 15:12 through 16. Now, when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. And he said to Abram, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in the land that is not theirs, and will serve them. And they will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge afterwards, and they shall come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried at a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete.
All right, read of the same chapter, verse 6.
Okay, verse 6. And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness.
All right.
Okay.
Now go to Genesis 14:18
Okay.
and 20.
18 and 20. So then Melchizedek, this king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. And he blessed him, and he said, blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tithe of all.
Okay. So what I've had you do is kind of read in reverse. So this of how God established Abraham. So first Abraham met with the Melchizedek.
Correct.
And Shem. And then Abraham paid tithe to Shem as his Melchizedek. Then Yahweh called Abraham righteous.
Right.
You see, it was verse 6 of chapter 15 that God said he was righteous. So in chapter 14 is when he's meeting with Shem, and he's paying tithe. Then God calls him righteous. And then God cut covenant. And then God prophesied.
Okay.
And what did he prophesy to him? He prophesied because it's tied back to Shem's blessings.
Right.
And Melchizedek's words do not fall unfulfilled. What did he say? He said to him, blessed be the God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hands. So, then God prophesies and says, your offspring will be afflicted, but afterwards I will bring them out with great possession.
Wow.
So see, the paying of the tithe into the system made a tribute. That's what a tithe is. It's a tribute to your king. So then, because he was making a tribute, his king was saying to him, your enemies will always fall at your hand. So God is recording this conversation, right? He's recording the words of the Melchizedek.
Right.
So now, 400 years later, God says, okay, it's time that the words of the Melchizedek be fulfilled, and for my son, who I've called righteous as offspring, is crying out to me. But what am I hearing? I'm hearing the call of the Melchizedek.
Wow, that's amazing, amazing. So then this sets us up for Exodus, and that's all of our time for this video. And we appreciate you watching, and we will see you in the next teaching. Have a great day.